I open at the close. It was the final riddle that Dumbledore left to Harry Potter. It was written on the snitch. That's the little flying ball that Harry caught in a sports game in his first year at Hogwarts. I open at the close, it said. The meaning of the words were a mystery to Harry and his friends until the battle between them and the evil Lord Voldemort was all but lost. To bring an end to the carnage, Harry realized he needed to go meet Voldemort in the forest and face his fate. It meant certain death. The realization came when Harry finally understood that in the terrible, murderous event that had given him his famous scar, a piece of Voldemort's soul had entered him. So to eliminate it, Harry too needed to die. Now, Harry loved his friends who had become his family. He loved his community so much that he found the courage to go of his own accord to his end, to the close, to be killed by Voldemort. In these past weeks, we have watched the rise of Vladimir Zelensky, president of Ukraine. If news reports and political analysts are to be believed, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has not gone to plan. It's said that Putin thought the invasion would be complete within as little as a few days, with little resistance, and with the Ukrainian government either quickly falling or surrendering. Instead, the Ukrainian people, empowered and encouraged by the example of their courageous leader, are fighting back. There has been no surrender. Again, if news reports are to be believed, President Zelensky refused an American offer to evacuate, responding instead, "I need ammunition, not a ride." Despite the increasing danger, he has remained in Kyiv. The situation is, of course, developing by the day, by the hour, and perhaps at some point a different choice will be made. Nevertheless, we are bearing witness to people who, in the face of great odds, are staring down destruction and the threat of death. Fight, flight, freeze. These are the three basic human responses when we are faced with a threat. Our neurobiological response is the same, whether the threat is real or perceived, imagined, and whether the threat is physical, emotional, or otherwise. Anxiety floods our bodies and our lizard brain takes over. We react on instinct, usually by freezing, fighting, or fleeing. Sometimes those responses happen kind of in a series, but we all have our favorite, our first instinct. Our bodies react before our cognition, our thinking, even knows what's going on. Worth noting that this is the kind of space we've been living in more often than not in these past couple of years. Collectively and each in our own ways, we've been reacting to mortal threat. And over such an extended period of time, the stress hormones that releases can build up in our bodies. Even as the threat wanes, the high alert held in our bodies remain. So finding ways to feel those feelings, to process the overabundance of cortisol in our systems might just be the most important part of our Lenten spiritual practice this year, so that we can stop reacting to threat, which will help bring our brains, our cognitive function kind of back online on a more consistent basis. Collectively, we have already been working on this as we have been reflecting on who we are and what we most value. We continue that work this week on Wednesday for our Wonderful Wednesdays, as well as with Parish Council as we think about, reflect on the big picture of our parish and the next steps in our life together. Fight, flight, freeze. Now, the biggest difference between Harry Potter and Vladimir Zelensky, beyond one being fictional and one not, but the difference is that Zelensky is still facing the threat of death. It's not assured. By the time Harry walks into that forest to face Voldemort, he has already accepted, even made peace with the reality of his death. Only then does he come to understand the riddle. I open at the close. Get away from here, some Pharisees warned Jesus today, for Herod wants to kill you. Your life is in danger, a threat from the governing tyrant. But Jesus is determined and focused. And frankly, he has a schedule. I'm casting out demons, today, performing cures tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. My calendar is booked up. I don't have time for death this week, sorry. Either Jesus doesn't perceive Herod as a real threat, or he just doesn't care. Maybe Jesus so highly values his work, is so committed to his divine mission of life, his mission of healing and justice and peace, that outweighs any threat response to life and limb. I suspect this is also why President Zelensky stays. His work, his country matters to him so much. I must be on my way, Jesus says, committed to his journey towards Jerusalem, even as he laments, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. Jesus knows that continuing on his chosen path, the way of God, the way of sacrificial love, means that he will die. His death is in fact assured. He goes anyway. In his book, Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End, Dr. Atul Gawande summarizes rather surprising research findings that show, quote, you live longer only when you stop trying to live longer. You live longer only when you stop trying to live longer. This is true particularly for people nearing the end of life with terminal illnesses. The research shows that ending Hail Mary curative attempts results in better and often longer life. It's a rather beautiful example of medical research and biblical story, science and religion coming together to show that letting go of the fear of death leads to a better quality of life. I open at the close, written on the snitch. When Harry Potter made peace with his looming death, the close of his life, it opened. The same openness that we all receive when we find peace with our end. When death is assured, when the reality of loss is accepted, we can open to something new, something different, abundant life, resurrection. When Harry Potter got there, the snitch opened to reveal the resurrection stone, which enabled him to have life after death. Jesus traveled there to Jerusalem, and after his inevitable death, he rose again. Remains to be seen what President Zelensky's choices will mean for him and for Ukraine. But for us, the question is, what close, what loss, what death will open us to new, abundant, resurrected life?